Hello, fellow Americans. I'm Mr. Steffler. I'm coming to you from room 111 in Clintondale Middle School, and I'm here to talk about the Chapter 10 test. The Chapter 10 test is the last test of the first marking period, and it's very important that we do well on the Chapter 10 test. Also, I want to remind you that your reading notes are due the day of the test, along with your case studies are due the day of the test, and your slideshow. So a lot of things are coming in right here at the end of the marking period. So let's make sure that we get those things in. And if you have a question for me or a comment or some concern, you need to contact me on Edmodo or see me in class. First thing I want to talk about, obviously, in Chapter 10 test is going to be about the Bill of Rights, which was mainly written by James Madison, known as the father of the Constitution. James Madison was a representative at the time. He was a Federalist at the time, and he wrote most of the Bill of Rights. So James Madison is most responsible for the Bill of Rights, which is attached to the Constitution of the United States, for which he's known as the father. So I've mentioned that the Constitution is the Bill of Rights is part of the Constitution, and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights really can be traced back a lot to James Madison. Now, the Bill of Rights protections mainly come in front of the federal courts. Like when you hear about the Tinker case or the TLO case or these other cases, it's the federal court's job to protect people's rights when it comes to the Bill of Rights. So I just want you to understand that this is the federal courts. These are the courts set up in Washington, D.C., and the federal courts all around our country where these issues about freedom of speech and all these other freedoms are debated. The First Amendment has 5 rights. You should know those 5 rights. There's 2 questions on the First Amendment. It covers freedom of religion, which is freedom to worship, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom to petition, freedom of assembly. Your freedoms in the First Amendment are definitely limited. For example, you can't scream fire in a crowded theater. You can't there's certain things. You can't scream bomb in an airport. There's certain things that you're just not allowed to say. So especially if they're going to create a panic. Okay, free speech does allow you to say controversial things, but you can't say things that are going to create a panic. We talked about the Fourth Amendment with the TLO case, which has to do with illegal search and seizure. We know how that turned out. Talked about the Second Amendment, one of my favorite things to discuss, the right to keep and bear arms and the well-regulated militia and different people's opinions on that. So the Second Amendment's on the test. We've talked about the Fifth Amendment, which is the longest amendment, where, the most famous part of the Fifth Amendment is your right to remain silent, to not be a witness against yourself. This comes out most famously in the Miranda warnings. When you're arrested, you have the right to remain silent. That's right in the Miranda warnings. So that's something that you should know about the Fifth Amendment. The last amendment that is going to be asked about on the test is the Ninth Amendment. Okay, and the Ninth Amendment talks about freedoms that aren't mentioned in the Constitution. You still have the right to do it. Just if it's not mentioned in the Constitution and there's no law against it, you probably can do it. So like one example that I use is there was no cars in the days that the Constitution was made, but somebody invented a car. And is that person allowed to drive it? If there's no law against driving the car, then you can do it. So that's just an analogy that I use in the Ninth Amendment, which says that rights not listed in the Constitution belong to the people. So there you go. It's a quick review. I'm hoping that you're studying your slideshow and your reading notes, and a pretty good video. So without further ado, God bless you, and God bless America.